Alright, so I'm going to talk about utility weapons, which are a very important thing to vauban's kit. As for why my vauban looks like a clown, anyone who's played vauban before this rework drops, and actually played vauban before this rework drops, will understand this joke. Okay, let's get into it. So, the most important utility weapon in vauban's arsenal would most likely be the Mulus Quanta. Why the Mulus Quanta? Well, first of all, bullets shot through the orb increase critical chance to projectiles. This includes abilities coded as weapons, or what I like to call abilities coded as weapons, pseudo-weapons, similar to pseudo-exalteds. Okay? So, Flechette Orb, it is coded as a weapon. Breach Surge is coded as a weapon. We'll get into Breach Surge later. There's a video I want to do of Breach Surge, and it involves Lavos. So I want to get into that one. Breach Surge is also good with vauban. I mean, let's be honest, Mr. Warframe Guy did a video on that. But I'm getting off topic, so let's focus on the main thing. Mulus Quanta. Why is it good? Well, it increases your critical chance and all that of the projectile, which you can see in the wiki, and I'll leave in the description below. And also, Turbios has a video on this, which if you watch the Turbios vauban video, you know what I'm talking about. The other good thing about the Mulus Quanta is the fact it does this. The alternate fire shoots up to free-floating infested masses that can combine firing through the mass adds 100% electricity damage for each mass fired. Mass explodes after 9 seconds, dealing toxin damage. Okay? What the augment doesn't tell you, what the unique trait doesn't tell you, I will leave in the wiki so you can see the rest of it. But there's also the burst mass augment. The infested mass accumulates 200% of the image that goes through it and deals it in a 15-meter radius. When it expires, secondary fire will manually detonate in the existing mass. So basically, if you either manually detonate it or you wait for the orb to self-explode, it will take the damage that Flechette Orb does and then fucking explode it to everything in range. Which, for regular enemies trapped in vauban's vortex, this would instant kill them. But for tanky things like the Dedicans and that, you got two options. You got two things that'll happen. Either it will fucking just nuke their overguard, pull them into the blender of hell, and then the Flechette Orb will finish them off, or it will just outright kill them. Depending on how weak and lowered in health the Dedican is. Okay. Now, why is this good with vauban? Well, because on top of this, and increasing the shit of Flechette Orb scaling, because Flechette Orb uses level and HP, and it scales off its damage per hit on the enemy. Flechette Orb also synergies very well with Tesla Bank. Tesla Bank is level and HP scaling damage nuke. But it's getting buffed next update, because of course it is. And on top of this, it's also his subsume. This ability is also coded like Mark for Def. So like if I pull up Mark for Def, I'll show you what Mark for Def does. Like, so Mark for Def, right? Here, I'll show you two examples of what Mark for Def does, and then we'll get back into the vauban part. But just here's an example of what Mark for Def does. So Mark for Def, what it does is it uses the enemy's actual HP value as the damage type, and also your weapon's damage. So, if you use something like Damage Decoy to scale up the enemy's HP, you'll get more damage from Mark for Def. Mark for Def also takes into account Viral's priming, which gives you a 325% damage to health. So, there's that too. So, that is what happens if you use Mark for Def with Loki. Because Damage Decoy increases the enemy's HP, which then increases Mark for Def's, well, damage. Now, why is this important to Tesla Bank? Well, Tesla Bank is quite literally Mark for Def, but if Mark for Def scaled per hit of electricity zap, so it's great on things that can turn enemies immortal, looking at you, exactly, with Gaze, because it will instantly zap the Gaze target, instantly scaling its damage up. And not only does it take the damage you do and then detonate it into the radius, but it can make even the shittiest of weapon, which you've probably seen my Azima video, nuke shit. So that's why. What it also can do is it stores that damage and then it goes and finds new targets and repeats the cycle and detonates it again. Because unlike Mark for Death where it's a one and done, Tesla Bank runs off charges. So it's not a one and done. It will continue to repeat the death over and over again. This is what Mark for Death with Trinity does, because Trinity does true damage with her fucking Eevee. So what you do is you nuke her duration, you prime viral, you cast Mark for Death, you armor strip them with Link, and then you cast Eevee on the Mark for Death target, and they all go boom. Okay? Alright, let's get into the vauban thing. So, this is normally... I'll switch to my regular sofa. Right. I'll throw this down so that way I can buff up my melee exposure. There we go. So, I'm not using my normal Stropha build, which is my heal one, because Vauban's an engineer. He works for not hunter, so I want a heal tool, since he's usually relying on his abilities to do the work, not his weapons. But, just to show you, like, this is normally what would happen if an enemy dies to his one, right? And just to show it's not my melee doing the work, I just wanted to show you a quick explosion there with Stropha. I will pull out arguably one of the fucking worst weapons in the goddamn game. The Zima. Just to get a point across of just how fucking strong his one is. Here, I'll even buff myself with Overdriver just to be funny. Just to be funny. Just to show that it's not my melee doing the work. It is entirely the goddamn ability. There you go. That is how strong his one is. His one is pretty fucking strong. Alright. So what happens with Mios Quanta is when it detonates the explosion from the augment, it will then detonate that explosion, and then what will happen is Tesla Bank will then store that damage. And then when Tesla Bank stores that damage, when it goes off, it's going to release that damage that it just stored into the horde. Which then what that's going to do is it's then going to store that damage, and then since it runs off of charges, unlike regular Mark for Death, and as you can see there, I have 17 charges. It runs off of... The charges run off of... Depending... Can't remember. Is it strength that they run off of, or is it duration? Either way, they run off charges. Yeah, it is your duration. So, you get some duration in there, you get more charges. I'm pretty sure it's also strength. No, it is duration. Okay. So, you get more charges based off of your duration. Can't remember strength or duration. You're right. So, yeah. So you get more charges, and each individual charge, what it will do is it will take the damage from the last explosion, and it will carry it over to the next charge, and it will repeat the cycle over and over again. So I'll just show you what the Quanta does on its own without any help from... you know, Tesla Bank. I'll just show you on its own what Flechette Orb can do with the Mios Quanta. And then I'll show you what it can do if I bothered my ass to bring out the one. Okay. So, on its own, Flechette Orb just doing decent damage, right? Nothing too crazy. But if I throw a bunch of these down, like that, and then I do that, what's going to happen is Flechette Orb is going to constantly shoot into that bullet orb, and then it's going to then do that. Yeah, it's going to detonate it. Now, if these weren't Dedicants, if these were like, these aren't obviously regular enemies. These are enemies only found in Railjack and are pretty tanky. But the point still stands. If it was regular enemies, they would have died quite literally instantly from the explosion that Venus Quanta creates with Flechette Orb. Not mentioning the fact that Flechette Orb already is a goddamn blender, murdering the hell out of these enemies. So that doesn't help either. Like that. So that's what Quanta does once it builds up its damage. Is it explodes like that. So, if you combine Flechette Orb, Quanta, and Tezabank all together, this is what you get. Okay? This is what you get. Now, as for why I'm using the Venus Quanta over any other utility weapon, like, for example, the Scourge. Like, the reason why I'm not using, like, I don't know, the Scourge for headshots or anything, is because, yeah, the headshot bonus from the Scourge, where it makes every single projectile target the head, is nice, but I'd rather just skyrocket the shit out of the crit chance that Flechette Orb, while also causing a chain reaction to synergy with his one, which is arguably one of the strongest nukes in the game for anything that involves weapons. Because again, it scales with enemy HP, level, and your own weapon's damage. You can make even the worst weapon in the game, like I showed it earlier, the fucking Azima, work. But if you do want to use the Scourge, obviously you can just throw down the Scourge and it will work. Another good option as a utility weapon would be, if you're going for a weapons platform vauban, of course you could use the Ventus. Give yourself that fire rate. Because, again, vauban's job is to let the game play itself, have enemies come to him. He's not a frontline fighter like a Saren. His job is to sit still, and he's a trapper. He traps enemies and then he murders them. So you could just like group them all up and then just murder them with the Ventus if you want to. Could also throw in the Ferox, have them all get primed by Viral. And this would also pull an Acolyte. It's one of the few things in the game that can actually pull in an Acolyte. So you could do that. And what's good with the Ferox is also, since it primes Viral, you can go with a build with the Temple Subsume Pyrotechnics. Because Vauban ragdolls, every single hit that Pyrotechnics does will be a headshot, because each individual limb in a ragdoll is coded as a crit hit. So you get stupid stuff that happens like this. I didn't even armor strip them, by the way. So, oh yeah, I forgot. That's another thing. Is Vauban cannot be nullified. Like, I walked into the table there, and all his abilities are up. He runs off of a code where he cannot be nullified, even if he falls off the map. The only way a Vauban can be nullified, ability-wise, is if a nullifier directly touches his abilities. So if a nullifier directly touches his abilities, then he will lose his abilities. But if he walks into a nullifier field while his abilities are active, they don't get cancelled. Which is not really an issue for Vauban, because he can just use his you can just use this Flechette Orb to whittle down the Nullifier. Yeah, like, it's not really a concern, because vauban can just use his Flechette Orb to whittle down the Nullifier's field. And then just pull them into the bullet hell. So nullifiers aren't really that much of an issue for vauban. Lever is Overguard, because again, Flechette Orb will just destroy Overguard and then just pull them in like that. Like, I'm not even fucking doing anything. The game's playing itself right now. But if Overguard really is that dire of an issue, you do have weapons. Like, you could just shoot an Angstrom that's just designed as a Overguard stripper, which also just gives you back survivability, like Circular Fortifier. You can also just have your one go out and nuke the enemies. Obviously, don't have it go after a Nullifier field, because since vauban's abilities are coded where if they hit the Nullifier field, they get destroyed, but you don't. Yes, this will apply to Flechette Orb, so if Flechette Orb rolls into that bubble, it will die. But if you go in there, it doesn't. You also have the option to, you know, just walk into the Nullifier field and kill it. And if Nullifiers are even more of an issue, which they shouldn't be, because again, you're kind of vauban, you have multiple ways to just make them irrelevant. You do have the Miter Incarnate, which is a homing heap ball launcher, which comes with neutralizing justice, which can permanently pop a Nullifier field, so there's that too. He doesn't really get screwed over by Overguard and Nullifiers as much as people think. It's kind of like Limbo. A lot of people think that Limbo gets fucked over by Nullifiers and Overguard, when really the only people get screwed over by Nullifiers and Overguard as Limbo are people that don't actually play Limbo. Like, people that don't actually understand Limbo's kit. Which a great example of that would be Cypher Freak's channel, as someone who actually plays Limbo. Alright. So yeah, you could technically use other utility weapons, but there's no point when Mutila's Quanta plus vauban is just too perfect of a combo. It does so much damage, but there's no point in ever using other utilities. And of course, when it comes to the Acolytes, again, vauban has ways to kill them. If you're really that concerned, you can have a secondary or a melee for it. Or hell, you can also just have an arc gun. Just pre-charge this and then just pull it out and alt-fire the Acolyte when it shows up. It will instant kill them. It doesn't matter which one it is, it just instant kills them. Yes, it'll even one-shot Mania for his Zephyr Shield. It does not matter. And if you're worried about, what if I die to Malice redirecting my damage back at me? Just dodge roll. If you dodge roll, you get out of the bubble, so there's that. I mean, yeah, you can also just use Cyotid to pull everything in to vauban's vortex, but that's not really going to matter next update, because vauban's going to passively pull things in anyway with Tever, because of Flechette Orb naturally having Tever into it now rather than having to cast it. So that's kind of irrelevant. I mean, an interesting thing you could do with vauban is you could probably use like a primer to prime them with Toxin, and then while they're trapped in his vortex, hit them with the Spinnerex, because it causes toxin explosions. So you could do that. You can also do a Lingering Death build where you pull everything in, and then you just heavy attack with that, and then just leave them to just sit in the corrosive death cloud of the Costuist. Again, vauban has a lot of synergies. It's just the fact that are people willing to utilize those synergies or not? Because again, his job is to use the arsenal to his advantage and the surrounding map to his advantage. He's not a run and gunner. He will just sit still and have the enemy come to him and die. That is what he does. It's like, well, you could put life on him and then just infinitely scale your Tesla Narvos. You could run Resonator and have enemies mindlessly run towards you because Conductor makes the ball sit still. And then enemies will just mindlessly run into the vortex because their AI shut off. Could not really run this anymore because, again, the next update, which is going to be about vauban quality of life, it's going to allow you to armor strip ragdolled enemies. So Bastille will now armor strip enemies trapped by vortex. So you no longer need to use Jade Eyes to armor strip enemies in vortex anymore, which is nice. So I might actually swap that out for a different subsume. I don't know yet. But yeah. Utility weapons are a huge, and I mean huge, power vauban's kit. Now, I can't remember if I mentioned this or not above, but what I highly suggest is not going over 1.6 multi-shot. Because if you go over 1.6 multi-shot, rather than having one big orb that absorbs all the damage and also buffs your flechette orbs, you will release multiple little orbs, and those can bounce around and just like move the orb away from flechette orb. And also you get less of the buffs from the passive. So it's best to have at least 116 multi-shot, or just enough multi-shot where you get one orb and one only. One only, just so you get that nice buff. Which, this is just like, just enough for that. Vigilant Armaments is like just perfect. Which I can show you right now what happens if you don't do that. I'll show you what happens. Like if I place the augment here, which is a real nice augment, you'll see what I mean by you don't want too much multi-shot because you screw up your build. So you get 116, right? Now if I put this in, you get to 2.5. Yeah, you get the big one like that, which is great. But the problem being, if I happen to, I don't know, put this here, and then I spawn in a bunch of low-level enemies, there we go. Oh, never mind. Okay, so I'm underneath the mount. Okay. Well, either way, there's a certain amount of multi-shot you can put on this thing. I thought it was 116, my bad. There's a higher limit. But yeah, there's a video that covers it. Asian Invasions did a video on it, and there's also, again, we get down below, but I remember 1.6 being the safest amount of multi-shot for it. You don't want to go too high in multi-shot with the Meatless Quanta, because if you go too high in multi-shot with the Meatless Quanta, what will happen is it will end up with it shooting multiple orbs at once, which you do not want. You do not want it to shoot multiple orbs at once. You only want just one orb. Let's see if I can shoot that. Yeah. Either way. I'll leave the Turbio's video in the description and all that. Okay. Yeah. There you go. That is vauban. And if you're curious my vauban looks, I have the Lich King right here. I have Clown Vauban, and I have the Black Knight Ghost from Scooby-Doo. Other good options, the synergy of vauban is, of course, the Necros Dog, because you can get loot while you're doing your vauban thing. You can also run Death Cube for the energy orbs with the assist mod. You can run Carrier for more ammo. You could run a MOA. You can also run the Visor to give you some passive healing while you're AFK and just nuke. Get the Riga, get more priming. You can run the Sly so you get some bullet evasion, so vauban's less likely to get shot while he's standing still. You can run Helios so enemies that get trapped in your vortex scan, and also on top of that you benefit from the sonar augment detect vulnerability. You can also have it armor strip enemies that are damaged by your abilities, because Vicious Bond allows any ability in the game to armor strip. You can go invisible with the Hurrah's Kerber and benefit from stealth multis, and then run Arcane Crepuscular. You can run the Mini Sarin, which is this, so that way you get Toxic Lash on literally any weapon with the Pharaoh Prototype. Of course, you can run the Smita for its buffs, but let's be honest, after the changes, the Smita doesn't have many buffs anymore. Of course, you can run the Cordon, just pull even more enemies in and have them primed. You can run the Panzer, have them primed. You can run the Vask, have it save you, like say you bleed out, oh no, it just brings you back to life, or do a slash nuke. Again, you could have Shade. You could have the Raska just giving you shield, so you just shield gate over and over and over again with the Raska Kubro. You could have the Taxon. And you can have the Adazera, or you can do a funny thing with the Helmet Charger, the Maggot build, where it just gets stronger and stronger and ends up nuking everything. You could also go with a status immunity build with Worm. Or you could have a Robodog just going around nuking everything and also stealing Overguard because of Manifold Bond. Again, vauban is very friendly when it comes to build diversity and arsenal diversity. It's really just up to how creative you are with your arsenal will determine how effective he is as a frame. If you want a really good channel for vauban, I would suggest Professor Disto. He mains vauban. But yeah, there you go. That's all I wanted to show you. But yeah, when vauban's rework comes out, for the people that have never played vauban, I highly suggest taking a look at Mutus Quanta and utilizing it. Or using Pyrotechnics because of how strong it is. Hell, in fact, any ragdoll frame that you own, use Pyrotechnics with. It is a really good thing. It is stupid strong. And when I mean it is stupid strong, I am not joking. Like, it is ridiculously strong on anything that can ragdoll. This includes Neza, this includes Zephyr. Like, Pyrotechnics is really, really good. I would not suggest ignoring it. It is a super strong ability. Like, I didn't even hit them with damage on ability from Halo. Like, if I hit them with Blazing Chakram, also known as the Damage Vulnerability Halo, not only will I get a metric fuck ton of energy orbs when they die because of its augment, but I'll do a shit ton of damage too. So yeah, the best weapons to use with vauban are utility weapons, and also definitely try them out with pyrotechnics, since again, everything will be grouped, so you get a shit ton of damage because it scales off of enemy density, and also on the top of that, it also scales based off of enemies that are ragdolled, and it will hit the head of enemies, and each individual limb will be coded as a crit shot. Yeah, there you go. That is why utility weapons are very useful with Vauban.